how did ancient people perceive authority? Or put it another way, what kind of things constitutes authority in an ancient world? For us, authority comes from, comes from mainly two sources. First of all, authority comes from human reasoning. Our perception of the world is authoritative, dictates how we act and everything. And for some group of people today, a certain text, certain texts are a part of the authority, because under the influence of some form of Abrahamic religion, like Rabbinic Judaism, Islam, and Protestantism, text is sort of authoritative in the sense that the text functions as a sort of constitution or a sort of charter that dictates people's behavior. But in ancient times, these are not the kind of authority that people are looking at. The ancient people didn't think that human reasoning can be a source of authority. Of course, they use reasoning, and they use reason, and in the sense of Greek society, you can even argue that they think that the reason is a rationality. Human rationality is the highest property of a human being. But they didn't see human reasoning as a type of authority. The reason why is that human reasoning can only function based on certain set of data, based on resource. In other words, when we reason something, you always have something to reason upon. You always have some data and resource for you to think about things. But human beings are limited. We are limited in our perception. We are limited in our way of thinking. We are limited to our own environment. We're limited to in our experience. We don't have all the resources and data for us to reach to certain conclusion that can dictate our behavior in a grand scheme. I'm not talking about like small details in life, but in a grand scheme, in our perception of the world and perception of the situation, whether it's in a bigger societal setting, or you can say a political setting, economic setting, or even in a philosophical sense, or even in a more metaphysical sense, or even in a real daily life kind of sense. How do you see interaction with people? So because ancient people realized that ancient people knew that they had a very limited experience of everything. They don't tend to use reasoning, the reasoning sourced by those limited data, to determine how they should view the world, how they should conduct in their life. Text is also not a source of authority, because text doesn't stand alone. Text is not some authority in the sense that it's like how we see it, like a constitution or a charter or a foundation for something. Not necessarily, because text is intertwined with practical traditions. Text is always a part of the practical traditions. In terms of, for example, in ancient China or ancient Japan, you have text, but the purpose of the text is to help you to be initiated into those practical traditions, rather than the other way around. So text does has its function. Text do play its role, and it's very important. but people didn't see text as the only source of dictating your life, dictating your worldview and everything like that. On the contrary, they see text as a part of a greater tradition, a practical tradition, or they see the text as a part of the life of the community within the historical and traditional context. That's how they see it. So because of this, ancient people had three other sources of authority. The first source of authority is the tradition. Tradition is not personal experience. Tradition is a collective experience. Tradition shows perspectives more than one individual. They have different perspectives, and the fact that they became a tradition shows that they can incorporate into each other's system in a more harmonious way, or to put it in a better way, there wasn't such a thing as a system in terms of tradition. It's not about a system, it's about different wisdom navigating different situations in different people's life. So that's what tradition is about. Tradition is not about a system, and tradition is not personal, is not individual. The wider perspective of tradition draws from wider perspective and the experience of different individuals from different places and throughout different times. So it has a wider perspective and has wider applicability in different situations, and speaks to more situations, speaks to more personal conditions. So in one way or another, it's more unbiased. It's not entirely unbiased, because still one group of people has its own like collective bias. That's still there, but it's more or less unbiased and compared to mere individual perception, mere individual bias. And the resource and data of the tradition is wider than personal experience. So that's very important. And another source of authority in the ancient time would be a living tradition, a living person in a hierarchy. For example, a patriarch of a community, or a chief of a household, something like that. Someone in an authoritative level. The reason why that kind of person can become an authority is because these people, first of all, those people usually are older. Usually, not all the time, not always, but usually those people are older. They have compared to the community, a small community in a family or in a village or something. Usually those people are more experienced than other people, or they are among those who are most experienced people. And that's why you see in the ancient Near Eastern context, people always talk about elders. That's also true in the Greek Orthodox tradition. People talk about elders. Why you have the title elders? Because traditionally, people who are old are considered more wise. They have better. They have experienced more things. They have a wider. They have more experiences. They have wider perspectives. And also, these kind of people are also the people who, in ancient times, they deal with things that normal people don't deal with. For example, they deal with wider communal issues within the community and without, or inter-community. So they see things differently. They see things in a more complicated way than normal people would have seen back then. So those chieftains, those elders, those patriarchs, they have more authorities compared to the rest of the community. And then the third source, which is, I think, most important source that in our enlightenment influenced modern world we kind of lost, is the authoritative source of deity. Ancient people saw the deity as the ones who were actually running the world. You're living in the world that run by them, of course you need to live by their rules, because basically it's their world. Whether it's about deceased people, whether it's a specific deity or a set of deities you're talking about, they are the ones who are authoritative. They are the ones who knows better. They are the ones who created the created order. They are the ones who is running the order. So what you need to do is to submit to what they say. You better submit to them, because your fate is in their hands. Your future is in their hands. They know your future. They navigate you the best. That's the idea. Now, we in our modern culture, where enlightenment has been so embedded in our way of thinking, we no longer think about deity as something even real. But whether you wanted to believe it or not, they're real. They're there. Like, just talk to people who had paranormal experiences. Like, that's very real. That's there. So you do have spiritual or supernatural involvement in people's life, and in a very active way, and that become a sort of the unknown, so to speak, become a kind of authority whenever anything is revealed to us. But that's how ancient people perceive authority. That's the ancient sources of authority, and in my opinion, and I would argue that they have a more realistic perspective on human limitedness and personal bias, and they have more reasonable understanding of the relationship between supernatural and the visible world. Therefore, their perception of the authority is more important and even superior to our modern humanistic enlightenment understanding of what authority should constitute.